Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
For the first time since World War II, as far as I can tell, air raid alarms sounded in the neighboring sovereign country of Moldova. The Russian missiles, it seems they entered Moldovan airspace. And so Moldova, they had air raid alarms early this morning.
Joe. Little fucking Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Energy facilities in Ukraine have been targeted again by the Russians. Let's go to Joseph Lindsley in Lviv. Joe, were you affected where you are?
No, I slept through this. I'm here in Lviv. The city of Lviv was all right, but there were Russian missiles and drones flying throughout the country, including here in the Lviv region. And actually, for the first time since World War II, as far as I can tell, air raid alarms sounded in the neighboring sovereign country of Moldova. The Russian missiles, it seems they entered Moldovan airspace. And so Moldova, for the first time since World War II, they had air raid alarms early this morning, just a sign of how easily this could spill into other nations. Poland scrambled its fighter jets, its F-16s, just in case anything happened there. And meanwhile, I'm talking to you right now from a beautiful spring day, 60 degrees in Lviv. In much of the world, it's Good Friday, I think. But here, for Catholics and Orthodox of Ukraine, it is just the beginning of Lent. Easter won't be until May. And this is notable because it's the last time that Ukraine will celebrate Easter on the same schedule as Moscow. By next year, they will be celebrating in accord with the rest of the world, with most of the world. And just a sign of how much they want to shed and dispose of anything connected with Sovietism completely. And as I walked around Lviv today, it's the cafes are putting their tables onto the cobbled streets. It's such a peaceful scene. But then you think about that, the horrible hell that Russia was unleashing throughout Ukraine all of last night. And it does seem, rather than attacking cities last night, they were most especially focused on infrastructure and depots, perhaps supply depots. By 10 o'clock p.m. Last night, we had news that Russian drones were prowling throughout Ukraine, some surveillance, some seeking targets. By 11 p.m., there were explosions in Kyivshchina, which is the Kyiv region. And by 11:35 p.m., there were Kh-59 missiles to Dnipro. And then by 1 o'clock, it was clear that this is going to be an eventful night. 6 Russian bombers were in the air. By 1:30, that number had increased to 10, so signifying a pretty heavy attack on the way. And around 11 a.m., the Russian-Iranian drones began to attack here in the Lviv region. Similar places they've attacked in the past week around that small city of Stry. And it seems that they are certainly the Russians are looking for something that they really want to destroy. Around 3 a.m., another flock of these drones, the Russian-Iranian suicide drones, entered Lviv region. And then while all that's happening, at 3:40, a second wave, we had reports said Russia had launched a second wave of missiles from the Caspian Sea, just as the first wave of missiles were beginning to arrive in Ukraine. They were entering the Kyiv region. And then 4 a.m. was an hour of madness. Drones and missiles going, every possible direction, constantly changing course. And then at 4:50, we had reports that a MiG was airborne. The MiG is capable of carrying those hypersonic missiles. And then precisely, or just about at that moment, about 5 o'clock, all of those missiles began to turn toward the west. And then a few new ones arrived in the east. By 6 a.m., it was all clear, and it became clear that the Russians had once again massively attacked Ukrainian energy facilities, other types of infrastructure, and likely, of course, they're seeking military targets so they can do everything they can in their mission, which they make it quite clear to the Russian mission to destroy Ukraine. And that's what we went through through the past night, even though it seems to be a calm, sunny day here at the moment.
Sadly, I bet you're almost getting used to nights like that, aren't you, Joe?
I mean, indeed. I mean, there was a time when I would stay up monitoring all that. And it's so, as we've talked about before, you never want to be complacent, but it's a hard thing to keep up with, and especially with this increased intensity these past weeks. And we have concerns that this is going to the Russians they're preparing for something major. They're making their move. Maybe they've smelled weakness from in the lack of support from America and other places. Today, the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk gave a speech, saying to Europe, "Hey, we're in war. It's coming for you. We all have to wake up." And this, he said, he was recalling, stories of World War II, and he never thought that this could come back to Europe, but it's here. Ukrainians have been holding the line. If Ukrainians had fallen, and this is what Tusk is trying, and others are trying to say, just imagine, what other countries this war would be in right now. And so this very sort of intense call for Europe to wake up. And today I attended an event for artists in Lviv. It was billed as a chance, anyone who has any kind of artistic skill to show up to this workshop to figure out how they can help soldiers in particular who've been wounded in battle, who've been traumatized by the war. And so amid all this, the scary macro stuff, it is great to see, these micro groups of people using whatever skills they have and whatever creativity they have to help in every way possible. And even the project of those who've already been wounded in battle to help them heal and continue to contribute to the strength of Ukraine. And when I was at that event, a Ukrainian artist, Mikhailo Skop, who goes by the name Nevan Made, he gave me a book in Ukrainian about the philosopher Edith Stein. She was born in Polish territory, and in the early 1900s, she became one of the most prominent philosophers in the world. She was at the University of Freiburg in Germany in the School of Phenomenology, and she was born Jewish. She became a Catholic nun, and for all those reasons, because she was a brilliant female philosopher, she was Jewish, and she was a Catholic nun, Hitler had her killed in Auschwitz. She was murdered in Auschwitz. But before she was killed, she wrote this book, which you can find for free online. And I would encourage anyone who's keenly interested in propaganda and what kind of threats we're facing now to look up Edith Stein on empathy. And in her school, this philosophical school of phenomenology, she was analyzing how our minds process experience, especially with media and all. And this was before mass media, but that radio was developed, and she foresaw our mass media culture and how easily we can be manipulated, and how, if you think about all the things that we consume, become just as much a part of our experience as those people that we live around. And so her book on empathy is both a way to understand that how this can be a threat to us, but how we can navigate it well. And she was a clear voice in the 1920s and 30s. She even wrote to the Pope and said, "You better wake up, because this Hitler's a bad guy." And people didn't listen to her. But today, she is one of the 6 patron saints of Europe. And so that book was handed to me today as so many people are thinking about World War II. And I would encourage anyone who's more interested in that to look up Edith Stein and her work called On Empathy.
Good time for me to remind people that we do post our conversations with Joseph every day after the broadcast. If you go to WGNradio.com, the Sirott Show page, not only will you find that there, but also links to UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And even though Joe paints some very vivid pictures for us on the radio, you can watch video of our conversations here too, UkrainianFreedomNews.com. But we've got the links up at WGNradio.com. I hope you have a peaceful weekend, Joseph, and we'll talk on Monday.
Thank you, Bob. Happy Easter, and have a good holiday weekend to everyone there in the U.S. And until Monday, thank you.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?